私、ミャオハと一緒にフリードたちと旅を続けたい。お父さん、お願い。
Hey everyone, it's Mark. This is my recap for Pokémon Horizons Episode 9, Arriving in Paldea. This was the 1241st episode of the Pokémon anime and the first one in the Paldea region. Took them long enough to get there. Let's get straight into the recap. Alright, so the Brave Asagi has finally reached Paldea, and the members of the Rising Voltacklers are excited to get there. We got to see a lot of Dot in this episode, although her storyline is based around her Nido-Thing costume smelling really bad, which is certainly a choice. Dot was even added to the opening as well, so she really has joined the main cast. As the crew lands the ship, we listen in on them discussing their plans for the day. For some reason, Molly and Orla are dressed differently, and they're even talking about dropping Liko off at her house. Liko happens to be just outside the room and can hear this, and was I the only one totally thrown off by this sudden talk about Liko possibly leaving the Rising Voltacklers? This felt totally out of left field to me, and I'm sure I'll talk about this more throughout the video. Freed and Liko start to head out, but Roy joins them, asking to see the sights of Paldea. The three of them walk together towards a gate, and inside is Mezagosa, and it looks really similar to the games. Like, usually the anime adaptations of in-game locations are very different from what we're used to, but this Mezagosa looked exactly like the one we explored in Scarlet and Violet. Anyways, Roy nearly runs straight into a guy riding on a Cyclizar, but they just leap over Roy. I don't feel confident about pronouncing any of these Paldean Pokemon names yet. Until I hear the way something is said in the English dub, it really is just a guessing game for me. Liko decides to show Roy around Mezagosa, and they do a little sightseeing. Liko gives us one of her internal monologues to talk about how this is nothing new to her, but it is cool seeing Roy get so excited by it all. Meanwhile, Freed is trying to get a hold of Liko's mother, but she's not picking up. Liko says that her father is probably home though, so everyone runs off towards Liko's house, although Liko is hesitant because she doesn't want to say goodbye to the Rising Voltacklers. She remembers how they were initially hired to save her and bring Liko back home, but still, once Liko literally joined the team, we dropped any and all insinuation that Liko was going to leave them when they got back to Paldea, so why is this even a storyline? Back in the airship, Dot has actually come out of her room to air out the Nido-Thing costume. She notices Ludlow dozing off on the couch, and he says this cryptic message that is really just taking shots at Dot for hiding from Liko and not just being open and honest. Back in town, Orla and Molly are shopping, and I'm not really sure what they were talking about, to be honest. I think whatever is going on with these two isn't really going to make sense until a future episode. Back on the road to Liko's home, our hero is questioning herself, while meanwhile, Roy is just impressed when he sees Liko's house. Freed asks if anything is wrong, but Liko tries to play it off. As she approaches the door, Fido comes out to say hi, and apparently this is her father's Pokemon, but I'm guessing it's just the family pet, kind of like how Yamper was to the Cerise family. Fuecoco is a fan of Fido, but Sprigatito is looking unhappy for some reason. Someone else notices Liko's arrival, and this guy excitedly runs out to try and hug Liko, but she stops him before he can embarrass her. It turns out that this is Liko's father, Alex, and now, having returned Liko to her parents at home, Freed declares his mission complete. They head inside Liko's house as Roy explains that he and Liko are also members of the Rising Voltacklers. Alex is shocked to hear this, but Freed tries to change the topic as soon as possible, drawing everyone's attention over to Alex's paintings. He admits that he is a painter, and he also says he draws Pokemon picture books. Liko asks where her mother is, as Sprigatito just looks angrily at Fido for giving so much attention to Liko. Alex says that Liko's mother is off on a field trip, and Liko just accepts that her mother is busy and walks up to her room. Sprigatito is not happy with this. Clearly it can pick up on the fact that Liko is not acting like herself. Liko starts to worry once she notices Sprigatito's gone, but she quickly notices that it's running around on the roof. At the same time, Alex offers Freed some coffee, but then he sits down to keep painting while he and Freed talk. In her chase to catch Sprigatito, Liko ends up listening in on their conversation. Alex admits that he was nervous watching Liko go off on her own, but Liko blows her cover when she knocks against the window. She did say in the last episode that she was bad at this whole sneaking around thing. Naturally, Liko just jumps through the window, pretending to look for Sprigatito, which causes Alex to ask, why did you just climb through the window? Yeah, everyone is acting really strange in this episode. But Liko does eventually find Sprigatito, although it won't listen to her. In fact, Sprigatito just has this shady look on its face, clearly disapproving of how Liko is acting. She decides that maybe she'll just head back to the airship for today, and Liko says that her father is busy and her mother isn't even here. But when she tries to get Sprigatito to go back inside its Pokeball, Sprigatito just runs off again, so Liko decides to leave it here for the night. We get more scenes of Liko feeling conflicted, and when they get back to the Brave Asagi, she even calls it her home by instinct. Back at her house, Fido gives a peace offering to Sprigatito, and the two of them go to sleep snuggled up against one of Liko's pillows. The next morning, Liko wakes up, still feeling conflicted as ever. She just doesn't know what to do. When she steps outside her room, Dot has left a drawing for her. It's Liko and Sprigatito looking all happy aboard the Brave Asagi. Over in the meeting room, Molly and Orla are having some coffee, which coincidentally was made using this kind of coffee beans that Alex likes. Yeah, I'm not so sure this was much of a coincidence. Anyways, Liko tells him that she doesn't even know her father that well, and Orla gives her the advice that what's important is what you want to do. This strikes a chord with Liko, who remembers that she told them all she wanted to find out more about her pendant, which is what she said when she asked to stick around and join the Rising Voltaclers. Again, I would like to ask why it has even been a question of whether or not Liko is going to leave the group so suddenly. Moving on, Liko runs into Roy, who says that maybe Sprigatito was acting weird because of Fido, and that it didn't like all the attention it was getting. Liko realizes that she wasn't really acting like herself yesterday, and she agrees with Roy that Sprigatito was probably waiting to see her again. Next, Liko stops by Dot's room to thank her for the drawing, and Liko says that she'll be back. Once she walks away, Dot says to herself that she'll be waiting too. Clearly, Liko's attempts at trying to connect with Dot have been a success. After this, Liko runs back to talk to Orla and Molly, but we don't hear what they say. Instead, we cut to Liko running off towards her house. Now her mind is made up. She notices the Nidothing costume still airing out behind her aboard the ship, but she knows that now isn't the time to think about this. Inside, Fried is finally up and asks where Liko is, and Molly tells him that Liko already left on her own. Then we check in with Alex, who wonders where Sprigatito went, only to find it waiting outside for Liko to return. Before she heads back home, Liko stops to buy some coffee beans and cake as a gift for her father. Along the way, a Lechonk crosses her path and starts charging at her. With as much grace as a main character in a TV show, Liko trips over absolutely nothing, losing her grip on the bag, which Lechonk just runs away with. Clearly, she must be pretty close to her house as Sprigatito hears her yelling and runs off to help. While this is going on, Fried arrives at Liko's house first, thanks to flying here on Charizard, but neither of these two know where Liko actually is. Well, Liko is actually having her own battle against Lechonk, but just when the wild Pokemon is about to attack her, bang, here comes Sprigatito out of nowhere to save the day. Lechonk charges at them faster than any Lechonk I've ever seen, but Liko remains calm and calls for a quick attack at just the right moment. Sprigatito drills Lechonk head on, causing it to get scared and run away. Our heroes celebrate with a hug as Liko apologizes for not acting like herself before. Meanwhile, these two clearly didn't care that much about Liko's safety since neither of them went to go look for her. Instead, they were just sitting around talking about Liko, and guess who decides to show up? Liko wants to tell her father something, and she says that even though she was nervous at first, she has so many experiences with all the others, and this taught her exactly what her grandmother told her all those years ago, which is that she'll go on her own adventure one day, and even though taking the first step is scary, she'll be just fine with Pokemon by her side. With the music swelling and emotions rising, Liko finally comes out and asks her father if she can keep traveling with the Rising Voltaclers. Alex thinks about it for a second, but he understands. He says that Liko has the same thirst for adventure as her grandmother, and I like the line when he says, "Sprigatito, I leave Liko in your paws." She's grateful to hear this, and Fried is happy about how things turned out. Back at the ship, Dot reclaims her Nidothing costume now that it doesn't smell anymore, and we dive straight into another video, this time talking about Pokemon natures, which have basically never been brought up in the anime. Liko is watching this video while everyone enjoys a snack, including some coffee made from the beans that Liko bought. Alex has his own gift, a pile of Pokemon picture books to give to Roy. Fried then asks if Alex knows anything about the Black Rayquaza, to which Alex responds by telling them that Brassius and Artisan said he saw a rare Pokemon. Well, that's hardly anything to go off, but it is enough for the Rising Voltaclers, who set their next destination as Artisan. Liko departs with Fried and the others, and the episode goes off the air with Liko having made up her mind and everything working out well in the end. I'm going to be really curious to see how everyone else is feeling about this episode because I was really thrown off while watching this. I had absolutely no idea that this episode was going to be about Liko deciding whether or not she was going to keep traveling with the Rising Voltaclers. That felt so out of the blue. Like, the tone of this episode was just so different from what I expected. And hey, it doesn't really matter what I expected to happen, I would never let my expectations dictate my enjoyment of an episode. With that said, I just wasn't a fan of this storyline. Like, why were they trying to make this so suspenseful? An entire episode dedicated to Liko's decision? And look, by the end of the episode, when Liko did finally build up the courage to ask her father to allow her to continue traveling with the Rising Voltaclers, it was a good moment. It put a smile on my face, and I was happy for Liko. But what was the point of any of this in the first place? It just seemed like such a weird tonal shift to me, and I didn't really like it. However, as always, I like to keep an open mind about these things. I mentioned earlier when talking about whatever Orla and Molly were getting up to, but I think the events of this episode will become more clear as time passes. So as of right now, I'm not the biggest fan of this episode, but that could change. I'm giving this episode a 6 out of 10 rating, and I'm not very confident about that if I'm being honest. I guess it was still a good episode, but I feel like I shouldn't have been spending half the episode asking myself, why is any of this even happening? There are definitely a lot of details in this episode that did catch my interest. I am really curious about the suspicious way so many of the Rising Voltaclers were acting around Liko, and it was also cool seeing the way Dot slowly continued her own character development. In addition, I want to know more about Liko's mother. The last time I heard about someone's parent being so busy at work ended up being, well, a little awkward in the end. Like I said, I'm going to be really curious to hear what your guys' thoughts are about this episode, so go ahead and leave a comment telling me your thoughts. There were plenty of things to like in this episode, but I thought it was a very odd first episode in the Paldea region. It was cool to see so much new stuff, but the actual plot was sort of baffling to me. It looks like things are going to get back on track in the next episode as the Rising Voltaclers travel to Artisan to meet Brassius. The episode is also going to feature the anime debut of Nemona, and it looks like Liko and Roy are going to be freaking out about meeting a champion level trainer. Brassius also looks like an interesting character to say the least, and my guess is that they're going to do the Artisan gym test before watching Nemona battle against Brassius. I wouldn't get your hopes up about Liko or Roy doing the Paldea gym challenge, but I know some people already do have their hopes up for that. With that said, thank you all so much for watching this video. The subs came out a little earlier this week, so luckily I was able to finish this video on Friday night, which is always my preference. Be sure to hit like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys next time.